Good evening and welcome to Long Island Resolutions for Recovery. Yes, we're on Long Island. I hope you're having a great week. This show is dedicated to the education and empowerment of the insidious disease, substance use disorder. On Long Island, we are the epicenter in New York State. Suffolk County, out of 64 counties, is the number one in deaths. I lost my son on March 14, 2012. So we are striving to educate all people regarding substance use disorder because it is a brain disease. And unfortunately, the disease is just claiming too many victims. But the upside, if there is an upside, Thomas's Hope Foundation, in conjunction with Family Children's Association, has started a pilot program which we discussed last week, Meet the Sherpas. So a Sherpa is just really a guide that walks you through very hard terrain. And any family or any person that struggles with substance use knows how difficult it is to navigate through treatment and recovery and detox. So we are specialists that are in right now only Good Samaritan Hospital in West Islip, and we are scooping up the person who is having a problem with alcohol or drugs, and Thomas's Hope certified peer recovery advocates are taking care of the families, because the addiction is a family disease. And without everyone getting well at the same time and moving through separate recoveries, the person that struggles with the disease really can't come back to their family unless everybody's moving in the same direction. So it is my honor tonight to have three members of our team here. Teri Kroll, who, thank you, Teri, you've been here before. Pamela DiLorenzo, who is just a shining star at the hospital. And my daughter, Jen, who you met a couple of weeks ago, too. You can smile.
I smile.
Okay. So, Teri, tell me how exciting it is that this, you and I are going back a few years. You, unfortunately, even more years than myself. And don't you wish that we were around for you?
Exactly. When my son Timothy was struggling with prescription drugs and then street drugs, there was no information readily available. There was information if I knew where to look, but I didn't know where to look. So Tim died in 2009, and just before Timothy died, he reported the person, I refuse to call him a doctor, who prescribed him into this addiction. And just after he died, that person was arrested because Timothy reported him. So that kind of led me to realize that we had to make some differences here. So, you and I both have been to Albany
Yes.
and Washington, and we've seen laws change, and that's great. But unless we bring it to the family level, where families are still reeling in just sheer despair, because they don't know where to go. Exactly.
Complete chaos.
There's chaos. There's not a quiet cup of coffee or a quiet cup of tea ever in your life while this is going on in your family. So, I volunteer at the hospital just like we all do, and it was the first person that I met with, family that I met with, so gratifying to see that we have a program that's reaching out to the whole family, just like the programs there are for children or family members who are suffering with recognized nationwide, worldwide diseases.
Yes.
So we're reaching the family, and we're giving them someplace to call and ask a question. Is this right? Is this wrong? What should I do next? How can I help my child while they're in for treatment? What do? I can't just sit back and relax. I have to know what to do. And to get them help is just huge. Huge.
I know. It's they're so relieved just to have someone, right, to call on the phone and say, this just happened. What am I supposed to do? Right. All right. Take a breath, number one, and just let's talk ourselves through this.
I remember when Timothy was in the hospital, and I didn't know he was using street drugs, and someone came and told me. And the person that came and told me said, you know, he's been trying to tell you, but he's afraid it's going to kill you. So I went into, he was in the hospital in ICU. And when I went into him, I just said, you know, whatever you say or do is not going to kill me. I'm your parent, I'm your family member, and I'm here for you. And what a difference that made for all of us living in the house, because he realized we were there for him. So just saying to a family member while they're in the hospital, just let them know you love them.
Yeah.
Is such a weight off your shoulders. Like, you know, I don't think I told him I loved him this week.
Yeah.
As insidious as the disease is and how angry you can become,
Yes.
you're angry at the disease. You still love your loved one.
Yes.
And they need to be reassured of that.
Yes.
So it's nice to go up and say to a family member, it's okay to tell them that you love them.
Pam, what has been your experience so far?
Here you go.
So I want to first say that I'm filled with gratitude to be able to be in this role. It makes a measurable difference when you can move somebody from crisis
Yes.
to a point of a breath, and to know that people are there to rely on, to kind of link them to resources in the community and link them to understanding. It's a learning curve to work with a family member who has an addiction to alcohol or substances, because we know how to love and nurture them.
Yes.
We don't know how to give out this
It-
firm, loving
it
through
goes-
your brokenness kind of love.
It goes against everything
Right.
that your instincts say as a parent,
Right.
especially as moms.
Right. So there's a practice to it. It's tweaking the language that we all use, but we use it in sometimes an angry manner.
Yes.
There's an underlying resentment, there's an underlying current going on. And when we get practiced at loving our loved one through their brokenness, we're able to share language that is supportive, that still tells them you love them, but does not allow them and enable the family. The whole family has to move forward into a healthier place.
Yes.
Because they have to be able to stop the manipulation and let that loved one know that this no longer occurs here under this roof.
The disease thrives on manipulation.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So it's the families I've seen over at Good Sam, it's such a blessing to be in a place of making a change and making a difference immediately, because you're taking a family in crisis and giving them a breath and giving them somebody to connect with. And the whole underlying point of this disease is human connection.
Yes.
So letting them know there's other people, and this is going to pile on, the efforts will pile on to eradicate the stigma we have over people that are seeking services for mental health or addiction.
And those two things often go hand in hand.
Right.
And we've been so well received at Good Samaritan Hospital. And I think we'll be well received in every hospital because, you know, as social workers and counselors and medical nurses and doctors, they have to do their job. So it's allowing us as Sherpas to explain to the family their place at the hospital, or their place in this treatment. And there is a place for you because, you know, if you can stand there and hug your daughter while the nurses and doctors do what they need to do, that takes that much off of them.
Yes.
So it makes their jobs, I don't want to say easier because their jobs are not easy by any means, but it makes their jobs more palatable, that they can get to complete something if there's support there.
Well, the nursing staff don't have the same set of skills that we have. Right. And we're not, we certainly have gone through training, but we're not treatment and we're not sponsors, but we know how to talk to a family and or someone in crisis. Right. So
and
there's
the
not,
family to
yes,
support.
there's not a lot of time for them to learn that language,
Right.
you know, and to have that finesse, you know, and listen, they have 20 people that they're taking care of.
Yeah.
Their jobs are extremely high stress, difficult, and, you know, sometimes speaking with the staff, it is heartbreaking and frustrating to them also to see the same person come in
Exactly. Yeah.
again and again and
Right.
again.
So we're already in a couple of weeks seeing the impact
Yes.
on the staff there at Good
Yeah.
Sam. They are really, really welcoming
Yes.
and are happy to have us on board.
Yes.
It's a sad thing that you have to have a program like this, but to have it is just an amazing place to come to for where people need to be linked
You
to
know,
treatment.
when people want to do something and help, we often think of, well, they should stop letting them come into the United States. So that's big, right? That's global, and then federal, and then, of course, the state. But people changing their own community is so extremely important. That's where real change is going to happen.
Absolutely.
And it's going to go like, and just
Absolutely.
go outward.
I mean,
So I think
sure
that's-
Jen would agree, having small children, that when your kids go to the doctor, you go with them,
Yes.
Right.
right? So now we're dealing with young adults or adolescent children.
And often I go with Jen and the children if both of them are sick.
Exactly, right. But my point is, as children, you're their caretaker.
Right.
So now we have adult and young teen children who think they're independent.
Right.
And
Yes.
Yes.
and this is not a disease that makes you independent, obviously. So we're at a point where we can say to the parents, you know what, you do need to be here. Don't think this isn't the place for you, because some parents are reluctant to even stand in the operating room, in the emergency room.
Yeah.
Because they think they don't. Well, he's an adult; he has to make his decisions. But you know what?
awkward,
He
yeah.
or she needs
Yeah.
you.
Right.
So it feels good to be able to empower families to say, stay here, because she's going to need you.
Right.
What's your
Right, that's-
experience been, Jen?
It's all been really nice. I agree that the hospital's really well received us. I haven't had a bad experience with anybody. I think that in the short amount of time we've been there, we've definitely changed some minds about the disease, and not as much about the whole disease, but just as small as, like, the people struggling are still people,
Yeah.
like, it's
That's
still
a
a
big
person.
piece. Yeah.
And, it's huge when you're going through something that's embarrassing to have someone still treat you like a person.
Yeah.
And it makes like the biggest difference, whether you're the one struggling or you're their mom or you're their dad. It's embarrassing. It is. It's okay to say that. But to have someone still treat you like, a person,
Yeah,
and
with
that,
dignity and
that it's
respect.
okay.
Yeah.
That
That
you're
they're
not
not
the
a
first.
dirtbag.
You won't be
Yeah.
the last, and it's okay. You
Yeah.
know, and it's been really nice, and just to be able to walk with somebody down the same road that you've walked is it. I mean, I'm full of gratitude all the time because we didn't have that, so it's really nice.
I agree. I mean,
It is.
I
In
think
2009, we were ostracized from our community
Yeah.
because of what was happening. We never hid what was happening. It was happening to us. We needed help. But
yes,
when people
ostracized is the word.
Yeah.
You became that family.
Yeah.
we became that family that
You're that
we're
family.
walking this
Don't
way
talk
and
to
people
them.
would turn around.
Yeah.
And still, there are people in my community that don't recognize the fact that I lost my son to a disease.
Right.
They cross their arms when they start talking to me, and I know they're being very,
Closed.
very close-minded, close-minded, and that's sad because they're members of my community. So, but on the other side, I also see a lot of members of our communities coming out and realizing that we have to work really hard to eradicate this epidemic, and that starts at, Linda and I are both in agreement with this, at the pediatrician's office. But,
Yes.
here we are, we're at the emergency level here.
We're at the end, and that's the misfortune of people's ideas of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
Hold it up Up here. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Now, of course, I'll lose my train of thought, is that we're seeing the end of the disease.
Right.
We haven't seen the progression of the disease. You know, so when parents say, John Venza and I spoke to parents transitioning from the 8th grade to the 9th grade at Comac Middle School the other night. And we never mentioned the opiate. For a little blip, we mentioned the opioid epidemic. Just simply to say, not all marijuana smokers will become heroin addicts, but 100% of heroin addicts started with marijuana. So now let's have a discussion. But the point being is, if you don't want to end up way down this road, well, then we have a lot of work to do at the beginning of the path.
Prevention, yeah.
Yeah. You know, and having that healthcare policy as a family, as a young family, coming through teenage years, and have it talked about. And, you know, the parents in the room didn't know, you know, you have athletes. One night of partying negates 2 weeks of peak performance training. To a young athlete, that's going to be a meaningful statement. So these are the kind of facts that you want to fill their heads with. But unfortunately, we were just talking about this in this day and age. So Nicole, Carey, who was here last week, you know, there's a concert tonight. And unfortunately, there's rumors that there's going to be trouble at the venue. These kids go automatically to Parkland or Columbine, or because that's the world that they're growing up in.
Perceiving.
That's what they're perceiving, and they're kids. So the anxiety and the stress that's coming. Yeah, okay, we're just watching. Excuse that man in the background.
Well, you know, you make a good point about where we are in this program, because now we're meeting families that are at the end point, but we're able to say we totally understand. Many of us have been in this position. We understand this position, and we can help you, because they're in total despair, thinking, well, nobody can
And
help me.
denial.
And denial.
And denial, you know.
And they're actually seeing in this short term that, yeah, we can help you through this, that we do see what you're going through, because for years, nobody would say, now, Teri, is everything okay?
Right.
Or what's happening?
They're
You know?
afraid to ask
Afraid
almost
to ask,
because then
exactly.
they put
'Cause
one
they really
foot
don't
in
wanna
the-
know.
Well, and plus then they're forced to almost help in some way. It seems necessary. When you know better, you do better.
Yes.
So when you ask somebody how they are, you now really have to believe that you asked them sincerely how they are.
Yes.
And you have to be able to respond in some way that makes you feel open, at least in that conversation, that I understand. I have
became
a
that person
sense
that,
of compassion.
how are you? Fine. I always just said
Yeah.
fine, because I knew they didn't really want to know.
They really didn't want to know.
But
You're
we
exactly
walk in
right.
that door saying, how are you and how can we help you?
And you know what? A lot of times it's not that people don't really want to know. You as the person, if you open that door, the floodgates
Oh,
will
yeah.
open. And if you're going to work, if you're doing, you know, you can't
You're
talk
trying
about
to
it.
control it,
You have to
yes.
control
Yeah.
it and keep it in its compartment while you're at work
Yeah.
or while you're dealing with other things. You can't always
Have a moment for grief.
have a moment for the grief. Yes. And you know, I'm glad that you brought that up, because parents grieve the life that they thought their children would have, and they're not even gone yet.
Right. You're absolutely right. You're grieving for somebody who's still
Living.
living.
For the life that you want them to have.
Yes.
And
For
you
the-
hope that they want to
that
strive for.
that they
Exactly.
hope
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
can get to. And sometimes, right, Jen, in that moment when they come in with an overdose, it's really hard to be able to see the person that they were. So with your brother, you know, Tom, who was Tom, right, was funny and charming and could light up a room and so much fun to be around. And Thomas, struggling, was a mean, deviant thief who would do anything to get his next fix. Anything. Run over anybody, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
He had to.
Yeah, you didn't have a choice.
He didn't have a choice. Mm-hmm. Now now I really understand that. At the moment in
Yeah,
time,
well,
it's difficult to appreciate.
Right.
And, and I have such a heart because the suffering that goes on is just,
Tremendous.
Yeah, what you have
tremendous.
to remember is that when someone's actively using, the choice is no longer their own. When they go to rehab and they're at least abstaining from a substance, when they come out, there's a clear head,
Some
and
clarity.
if they then make a decision to pick up, that was their decision.
yes.
But when you are in an active addiction, it is
not a decision.
It is not your choice. It's not your decision. It's a need.
It's an overwhelming
There's
physical
nothing
demand
you
is
can
what it is.
do about it.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not even a want. It's
Timothy
an
explained that to me.
overwhelming physical demand.
Timothy had explained that to Frank and I, and we didn't understand. We just didn't understand.
It's hard to
that
understand
it
when
is
you
hard to
don't.
understand. And he would explain, Mom, you don't understand. I fall asleep at night. I'm lucky if I make it through the night sleeping. And when I wake up, I'm craving that. So now, this was during his time of sobriety, he said, now I have to think consciously from the minute I wake up. I don't know about everybody else, but the only thing I think about is running to the bathroom because I got to go to the bathroom.
Right.
But this is a conscious thing you have to make before you pick your head up off the pillow.
Yes.
So, a family member does not necessarily understand that.
Well, unless you've experienced an addiction, like you yourself been addicted to something, it's really hard to wrap your head around it. And that's no one's fault. It's really difficult
Right.
to wrap your head around needing something. When you look at it from the outside, it's so menial. It's like,
Just stop.
really? You need that?
Right?
Just quit
smoking,
smoking,
it's
even
just
smoking.
whatever.
Just quit smoking.
Yeah.
People don't understand that. People
But you know
are
what?
physically
I think
addicted.
and I listen, I can't eat one cookie. I can't eat one M&M. I know that. I'm going to eat the package. And that's okay. And there are many people in the world. So you can kind of simplify it to just that. Can you eat just one potato chip? You can't. Because there's an overwhelming need to eat more.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, keep going.
Exactly.
And actually, I over the years of families I've spoken with, there's a couple different kinds of family reactions, and there's the one of total loss
Yes.
that you just don't know what to do. There's the one of anger, that you're just angry with the situation and you're angry with your loved one. And then there's the one of, I wish I could understand. And I think that's where my husband and I always were. We wished we could understand what happened. How did you become so dependent on these pills? And then when you stopped using the pills, why couldn't you just stop?
Right.
And so now we're meeting with families who have, we have to figure out which one of these avenues they're coming from,
Right.
Yeah.
and help them through
Right.
that avenue. And it might be more than one, and they might come out of one and go down the other road. So there's a lot involved in just helping a family.
That's why it's so important to get them in touch with an education
Exactly.
series on substance use disorder so they can understand the disease.
Right.
And when you're sitting in that little class, there are other families with exactly the same story as you.
And hoping
so
that
all
networking
of a sudden,
will create...
right,
yes.
and all of a sudden you're not alone. You're not the only person
okay
in the
to
world.
feel that way.
No, you're
Right.
creating a net for yourself.
Yes.
And that safety net is going to be able to grow. It's an amazing thing to be able to connect with the families. I think for many years they were left out of the picture.
Oh, big time.
For too many years they
For
were
too
left
many
out,
years, they were left out of the
Yeah.
picture.
Yeah.
I know when I lost my brother 8 years ago, it was a real fight and battle each time I wanted to be able to engage, to advocate, to give them clear history when he could not, so that they could put the pieces of the puzzle together and
Yeah.
we'd have a full puzzle and we can glue it and put it up on the wall. It was such a battle to get them to realize the integrity of the family was very important in the loved one getting better.
Yes.
And so fortunately, I'm a reader. I'm a person who wants to, again, understand the struggle, Because unless I can understand the struggle, I can't be helpful in it.
Yeah.
And that whole experience allowed me to see all the gaps and to learn along with everybody else now that there's new ways of looking at the disease.
Right.
And that society has been kind of, they have to now catch up. It's
And
a lot of
society
people.
needs to understand that the family involvement is imperative. I know you know that I was in a hospital with Timothy. He was unconscious from an anxiety attack, and I knew he was in recovery, but he was 21. So, I mean, do I look like someone that would be arrested? I was handcuffed in the hospital because they wanted to take me away because I was not allowed to speak on my son's behalf. So,
We're going to pick up your story. I can't believe the first half has already ended, so that went too quickly. We'll be right back after this message.
My age is 18 years old and my name is Evan.
My name is Sean and I'm 19 years old.
My name is Justin, I'm 16.
My name is Angelica. I'm 18 years old.
Marijuana, and I was 13 years old.
Marijuana, and my age was 13.
The first drug I ever tried was marijuana, and I was 12 years old.
It was marijuana and I was 11 years old.
Yes, and that escalated to promethazine, lean.
I began to take pills like Xanax, Percocets.
I began using other substances such as pills and alcohol.
I then went on to cocaine and pills and quickly progressed to heroin. I was 13 years old when I first started using heroin. I had like aspirations of going to like an Ivy League school, and that quickly, within like a year or two, changed. I stopped going to my classes. I stopped going to school altogether eventually. All my friends were kind of just dropping me.
I started getting in trouble in school, eventually kicked out. I got in trouble with the law a lot.
I wasn't really hanging out with a lot of sober people, just people that use. I overdosed at 15. I've been at Outreach for 5 months. Outreach honestly really helps you. It shows that you're honestly worth something. And it's possible to become sober if you put in progress. But it's not just gonna be handed to you, you really have to wanna change. Inpatient, you can't just leave. You stay here and you have to deal with it. That's what I feel like a lot of kids need.
In a long-term facility, the counselors get to know the resident better, and they get to actually work with them more than in a short-term 28-day facility. And it really gives kids a chance to work on themselves rather than being rushed through a program just to be thrown back into life, going back into the same old bad habits that they were doing before.
Coming in here, I couldn't believe how long I would have to be here, but after a couple months, like, talking to counselors, I kind of came to the realization that, like, I need a lot of time and work to repair everything I've done.
The things that we get taught here, it really does help you in life, and it gives you a different perspective. It's very important for a kid to have a family involvement in treatment so they don't think they're alone in this. We communicate on a better basis than how we used to. We understand each other more, and that was from the help of Outreach.
They come every Wednesday night for support group. They come to a group every other week.
They come to parent support group to discuss their problems also. My relationship honestly has gotten a lot better, because I remember my mom used to never want to say anything to me because she would be scared of my reaction. I'm starting to realize in here, like, I really have to take advantage of the fact that I have her still.
When I was about 14 is when my parents realized that I had several different problems, such as behavioral issues, and the behavioral issues kind of stemmed from my drug use. I began caring less about myself and others. Outreach has really made me realize how important family is. If I was out of state in a program where my parents were not involved, I would have never been able to strengthen my relationship with them. My father told me that I've inspired him to make changes in his life, and that meant a lot to me. I've never heard my dad be inspired by something before, and I was just proud that it was me.
Welcome back to Resolutions for Recovery. And we are here with my team, Thomas's Hope Foundation's team of Sherpas. We are certified peer recovery coaches, and we are working in Catholic Health System in Good Samaritan Hospital. So, Teri, please finish your story.
So we were talking about one time when Timothy went to the hospital unconscious, presenting like a heart attack, but it actually was an anxiety attack, and he was in recovery. And I was trying to tell the nurse not to treat him like it was a heart attack with Ativan because he's in recovery. And he turned around and said to me, "How old is he?" I said, "He's 21. You have no say. Step back." And of course, I'm not a very quiet person, and I was angry, and I didn't want them giving him Ativan, so I was yelling. And they said, "If you don't stop, we'll have to arrest you." So I was, in fact, handcuffed with those plastic things, though, not the metal ones. And as they handcuffed me, Timothy woke up and asked what was going on, not so nicely. And they said, "Your mother's trying to intervene," and she says, "You're in recovery." My mother's right. Well, she didn't want us to treat you with Ativan because she said you were having an anxiety attack. Well, my mother's right. So that led us to realize that we needed some kind of a health proxy for Timothy. And so we went home that night and we went online, we wrote a simple health proxy, and we all signed it, and we had it notarized. And we carried it in our pocketbook. I carried it in my pocketbook, Timothy carried it, and Frank carried it. And I did have the unfortunate opportunity to use it again, and it was accepted as a health proxy that I could make a decision for Timothy. But a health proxy for somebody suffering from this disease has to be written a little bit differently from my understanding. And that is that a normal health proxy, you can't make a decision. You're not able to make a decision.
You're not conscious. Yeah.
But this health proxy would have to be written such that this person cannot make a decision because of this disease. So I look forward to something like that, and I encourage families, not really when you get to the part in your life where you need it.
Right.
But maybe when you're sitting around the table and you're talking about family stuff and your children are little. I know we have grandchildren. I talk to my grandchildren about a lot of things in an age-appropriate way. But in particular for this, I picture, let's just say it's my family, I picture my daughter and son-in-law sitting at the table talking about families and our responsibilities for each other and how we can always make sure that we're going to be safe.
Yes.
And so mommy and daddy want to make sure that we're always taken care of and that we're always safe. So if something happens to mommy and daddy have a form that we sign that says daddy can make decisions medically for mommy, and it works reciprocally. And so I see that as being everybody in the family signs a health proxy. So that if there are problems, and it doesn't necessarily have to be just because it's for substance use disorder, it could be for anything, that we'd be able to help you make a decision.
And the unfortunate part in today's world is that a 13-year-old gets to make their own choices and own decisions, even in the hospital.
13.
That's the age of consent. So with the HIPAA laws, with the way that they're written for the privacy, if a 13-year-old is with, gets news and says, "Don't tell my family," the healthcare professionals can't share that. And that's just a little crazy.
I thought it was 16, but
No, it's 13.
It was 15, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's 13.
so this
16's too young.
right,
Yeah.
13's
Exactly.
just,
ridiculous.
it's asinine.
sense.
It's so in 3 years, Jen, 2.5 years, Vincent could say, "I don't want my mother to know anything."
Yeah.
How are you going to feel about
scary.
No, it's scary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of
How can you
course it's
parent through
scary.
something like that?
Yeah.
that? How do you parent through
Right.
something like that?
Who wants to go to Albany with me?
But because our
that's
our
something
hands
yeah.
are
Yeah.
they handcuff parents, from making any choices.
Right.
You're financially responsible till age 21. Then if I'm financially responsible, I have to keep them on my medical insurance. I have to do all of these things, but then I yet can't know what else is going on at such a young age. So it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make
Well,
any
we
sense.
say that all the time across the board. There's different legal ages for different things.
Yes.
Right.
So, I mean, that to me is just ludicrous.
18, you
Like, how
can go to
make that
war
decision,
and
right?
vote, but you have to be 21 to buy cigarettes and drink. So, and again, the other night at Comac, there's a reason why they raised the age of alcohol till 21. We have science now. We have the science of the brain that shows what alcohol and nicotine and marijuana does to a developing brain. And it forever changes all the pathways.
Right.
So parents that naively say or ignorantly say, oh, they're not doing that heroin, they just drink and smoke, it's fine. And they're 14, not really a very accurate statement,
Right.
because you're going to end
Well,
up
it's
on
back
a
down
road.
to society selling you that you almost
We're
had to learn how to
society.
drink
Yes.
to be able to know how to monitor yourself and what it took to be a civil drinker in today's society. But all the advertising that kids see chronically is all about you're not even going to have fun unless you
Right,
pick up
right,
a drink.
right.
Correct.
So until we change some of that language.
But that's challenging. That's doing prevention work and challenging parents to have a few parties a year where they don't drink. And I'm not the alcohol police, but certainly adults can have a glass of wine at dinner. But challenge yourselves not to do that.
Right.
That when you have a bad day, don't correlate a bad day with having a glass of wine
Right.
or a beer, because kids are going to come home at a very young
see that
age
correlation, yeah.
and say, well, I had a bad day today,
Yeah.
so I'm home alone, so I should have a glass of wine. Because the age of onset for boys is age 10, and that's not my number. That's the number that's been reported by all the agencies. 11 for boys and 12 for girls. So that's insanity.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Right.
It's
and there's no
reckless.
way of telling that your child is going to be the one that picks up the drink or picks up the
No,
drug.
it's
It
Russian
just-
roulette.
Exactly.
So when you say it's not my child, 1 in 4 will.
Right.
That's crazy.
Right. So we have an opportunity here, this crisis, for an
To-
underlying silver lining. The, crisis will bring us to a place of prevention, to where families will be
Yes.
seeking out at a much younger age with their children on how to model better behavior, how to model the, expectancies
How to have
of how to cope.
conversations.
Right.
Yeah, with
in
things
some
that come
instances,
up.
it's just a conversation.
Just a conversation.
Just having clear communication and allowing the child to have clear communication. They're coping with tremendous things.
Yes.
So, last week, a sophomore in high school shared with me that as a freshman on her first day of high school, she came home and told her parents that she found a safe place to hide in every one of her classrooms. So if we don't think that our kids are thinking about that, oh, my kids don't pay attention to the news. They're connected to the news 36 hours a day.
Right.
They're always connected.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The world never shuts off for them,
yes.
with technology and with social media and with everything else.
Yeah.
It never shuts off. And without having a discussion about a parkland or whatever else is going on, without having a discussion about that, you leave all that fear inside of them.
Yeah.
We, my grandchildren go on 9/11 down to Overlook Beach with their parents, and
Right in Babylon.
right, and my husband went with them one year and was so surprised to see that Brendan knew exactly why they were there, exactly what had happened. Because you know what, if we don't teach our children that these things are happening and be able to accept the fears that you have to accept, but also the responsibility you have to accept, then we're not doing them justice. So it's the same thing when it comes to substances. If we're not explaining to them,
Just
what's
say
going
no
on,
is not
it doesn't do it.
is
No,
not
right.
prevention.
No.
Just say no is not
We're
going
very
to
honest
happen.
with,
Why should you say no?
exactly.
Why should you say no? Having a healthcare policy that you know, once in your family that you open those doors and say, well, you know what, they're going to drink anyway, so I'll have the party here and I'll let all the kids drink in the basement. That's not being too smart either, right?
No.
Because I certainly don't want anybody making decisions for
Exactly.
my children. But it's against the law, period, end of conversation. It's against the law.
Yeah.
So why is it against the law? You know, educate yourself on all of that. No, they don't need to know they don't have to learn how to drink to go to
No.
college.
No.
That shouldn't be the goal here.
No.
But you allow them, you take off all the reins on Friday and Saturday. You don't need to know where they are. But Sunday through Thursday, they better be volunteering for their community service hours. They better be going to SAT tutoring. They need to get good grades, because if you get good grades, you'll get into a better school and you'll get a better job. We have to stop speaking to our 10-year-olds. They need to be kids.
They need to be kids and know that they have to exercise, they have to eat right,
Yeah.
they have to live right in order to have a better life.
Right.
Yes.
It's not about your job, it's about your life, and
Right.
your life starts with your health.
Yeah.
Yes. So Jen,
Right, Jen?
you're the mom of the young ones now.
Yes.
What do you think about? What would you love to see as prevention in school? Vincent's in the
Good
5th grade.
question. I mean, I have open conversation with Vincent. He has a lot of questions all the time. So we speak openly with each other. He knows as much as he should know, like about my brother, about
Age
his
appropriately.
dad. But I guess in school, I think that, like we talked about the last time I was on the show, I think that, you know, like at an older level, like at high school, I think it's awesome to bring in someone that has gone through recovery, and to bring like a real life to it, because it's really hard for anybody, but especially kids, to understand what could happen, or to understand the unknown without it being tangible. So I think that that's really important.
But
I
I'm going
also
to be the
think
devil's
that
advocate
we
with you
have
right now.
to-
Because sometimes when a speaker who's in recovery, and Teri and I have spoken about this, there are kids that listen to the war stories and then say, see, he's still here. I'm good.
I'm not saying that it has to be war stories. I'm not saying that it
So the
has
speakers
to be.
must be vetted correctly.
They have to be vetted, because
Right, I'm
you know,
not-
I've been
I
at,
mean-
at
And a
different
healthy
venues.
story is going to be told.
Where you were at Lindenhurst High
Yes.
School with me, and the person who spoke from recovery was a big football player, looked healthy, you know, whatever. And he started out, now he's talking to high school students, he started out saying, oh, you know, when I was in high school, I was on the football team and we partied, like Linda's saying, Friday, Saturday night, we partied hard, and then I went
Yeah.
back to football. And then, well, you just lost most of your audience, because you didn't explain the and then part first.
Yeah.
Because all those students heard was, I partied and it was great. Well, it's not. And so you really have to vet the person that you're going to have speak in recovery.
Right, and that's- I
make
mean,
sure that
yeah.
that they don't start out the story with this.
Yeah.
The word partying drives me crazy. The word high drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But, you know, started out with, I had these terrible years of my life and this is why. And I
Right.
never want to experience it again. So I agree that it has to be tangible. We have to be really careful about the
Right.
the
I mean,
human
I
The
part,
delivery.
you know,
Yeah,
right.
Delivery
I
of the
wasn't.
message,
I
yeah.
wasn't saying
Yeah,
I was
no.
going to pick them.
Right,
But
yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
Right.
Yes.
Agreed. Yeah.
I'm not picking them.
No, I
but
think the only reason why I brought that up is
Yeah.
when I tell parents, well, what can I do? When you go to your school board and you demand evidence-based prevention in your school district, you should also be demanding other things be done. But you need to know who you're hiring.
Right.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, we're very honest with our grandchildren in an age-appropriate way, and Linda and I agree on this as well. And my grandchildren never had the opportunity to meet Uncle Timmy. So they ask a lot of questions.
Yes.
And right now they're at the age where they want to know what Mama and Uncle Timmy played, where they played, who they played with, what kind of toys did they have. And so one day they were in the car and they said, did Mama and Uncle Timmy have bunk beds? So I said, oh, no, they didn't have bunk beds. They each were in their own room, and they had just plain beds, but lots of times, and I tell a story like a big storyteller. Lots of times Uncle Timmy would come and jump in Mama's bed. And one time he was jumping in Mommy's bed, and he fell and broke his arm. So my little 5-year-old said, is that how he died? Because, in their minds, they don't understand yet. So I was going to answer, but we had already told our 7-year-old, and he quickly said, no, that's not how he died. So I thought, okay, let him answer that question. So he answered the question, and he said, Uncle Timmy took too much bad medicine from a bad doctor. And that's what we had told him at that age. And as he grows, we'll be more elaborate about what happened. So my 5-year-old says, because of course he's thinking about the broken arm, so did you glue his arm back on? So, that part is funny. But then the next day, my daughter had a headache, and she doesn't take pills very well. So she took her liquid pain reliever that she gives to the children, and she took 1 cup. The dose for her would be another half a cup. And as she poured the other half a cup, Brendan said to her, Mommy, I think you're taking too much medicine. So Jamie called me and said, oh, maybe we shouldn't have told him that. I said, no, maybe we should, because that opens up dialogue, and that makes your children realize they have to be responsible. So it brings that family dinner table
And there's
conversation.
nothing wrong with a
full
little
circle.
fear
Exactly.
of taking too much medicine.
Well, exactly.
And it's almost ironic that it's fear that prevents parents
yes.
from wanting to do and know the obvious of what they should do.
Right.
Because when you have scientific tools today that can
Yes.
predict how many 10-year-olds in that grade have a propensity to have addiction part of their life because their coping skills are not measured up to the average ability.
Yes,
There's
or
a lot
genetically.
there's a lot of things that we could check off to say, we
I'm at a higher
help
risk.
to understand what risk this child is at, and for the families to open up and hear the words,
Yes.
because they just stand in the fear.
Exactly.
Stand in the
And
fear.
some
Pointing
families
out, my
don't.
child might be able to,
Right.
go down this path. No, we're saying any child can go down this path.
Exactly,
And the more
right.
you learn and the more you know, the better you're going to be able to.
Oh, you sound like that commercial.
The
You
better
begin-
you're going to be able to meet at those junctures in life, should
Right.
they present themselves,
Yes.
to be able to, be grazed by the bullet instead of that bullet to the heart, as
Exactly.
most of us have learned.
Yes. Pam, we have to agree, has great analogies.
She does, yeah.
Right, Jen?
She does, yeah. I concur.
She wasn't going to stop until you.
She had to answer.
She drove my car.
Yeah, she drove, yes, out of the lane, driving the car. That's just another little inside
Right,
joke.
right.
But what else, what other programs can Thomas's Hope do for families, do you think? I know, we've talked about it. It's certainly a sibling group.
Yeah, I think that sibling care will end up being the biggest part of prevention that you could that you could obtain in a timely fashion, because prevention is it's a huge
Undertaking.
demand to tackle. It's big, it's
Decades, yeah,
hard
it's
because
decades,
it's a society, and you can't change society in a night.
But
You know,
here's what I'm going to
there's-
say again. We're society.
No, I
Each
get
one
that.
of us.
Right,
Yeah, but we-
But
totally.
people
But-
forget that.
Right.
Jen is
I
saying
just-
is that's
yeah.
a doable,
Exactly.
measurable
Yeah.
There's a
thing,
doable
because this is a
thing
population
here.
of
Yeah,
people
there's
that
a
are being
doable
left
thing.
out.
That
Yeah.
if
But the
we-
more we do that, the
if
more
we
society
focus
understands it.
back
Yeah.
onto the kids that are kind of sitting on the bench at prom,
Exactly, right.
waiting for their mom to look at them the same way they're looking at the other one, because that's what happens. They're lost, and
Right.
if we focus back on them and give them language and give them knowledge, they're then
And a voice.
empowered.
Give them a
Yeah.
voice.
And then when they're at school and, in middle school, someone starts talking about oh my gosh, well, this one's parents are going to be gone and we might try a sip of this or whatever. That one kid
Yes.
being able to, he has the language, he has the knowledge, so he's empowered and he's brave to say, like, it's
He's
not a good
confident.
idea, dude. Like, it's not. This is what happened to my brother or my sister or my aunt or my mom or my dad or my
Yes.
uncle. And then word spreads, like, why that's how kids work. That's just
Right.
it's the same as the as the way drugs get around between kids. Prevention can get around the same way if we
Right.
feed it the right way.
Right.
Right.
So I think like that is a huge thing that's easily obtainable, that we can
Plus,
grasp it.
we're talking about siblings who are looking
Of
for
course.
a reason to be able to make a difference. Because here they are being, I'm not going to say that every family does this, but they're not the top priority right now.
No.
The
And not-
child who's
it's-
inflicted is the top priority.
Right, and it's not even the parents. They don't mean to do
Exactly,
that.
right,
It's almost
right.
unavoidable.
It is unavoidable. Exactly.
It's just what it is.
If
you
you
know.
had another person in your house that was sick with something, that person
It
would
would be the
Right,
same
and
thing.
then you
Right,
don't
exactly.
want to get to the place where your kid is like, well, you know what, screw it, because if I do that,
I'll get
instead
attention.
of getting good grades, if I go do what he's doing, they're going to pay attention to me, and then you have two problems. So, it's hard. Those kids are on a teeter-totter, and
fence, yeah.
Yeah.
And so
it's hard.
Tightrope.
Right.
Yeah.
And there aren't a lot of, that I know of, again, that we have to make available to siblings. And
I don't know
that's
of
where
any-
Thomas's Hope can
yeah.
help, because, we can seek out the right counselor for children and make it available to families. Because here this whole night, we've been talking about helping the parents.
Yes.
So, we help the parents to navigate what they need to navigate for their afflicted child.
No, not
But-
necessarily. So I'm going to, I think the power of us working with the family is we're not focused, is teaching the parents, your child is going to have their recovery. You're going to have your recovery. We don't own our loved one's recovery, right? That's their walk. We have to make you strong so that you can empower them. You're not going to cure them.
Right.
You didn't cause it, and you're certainly not going to control it. By bringing the attention back and saying, how's the other kids doing?
Right.
And the parents saying, oh, man,
A light bulb going off saying, I've been
I-
devoting so much time
Yes.
and energy, I haven't even noticed.
I haven't even,
have
and then empowering
Right.
them to sit down
Right.
with the rest of the family and saying, you know what, guys? You know that we didn't mean it.
Right.
We've been all
No, I agree with you
living,
100%.
and having that open conversation.
We're getting that
then.
with the parents,
Yes.
but still we're talking about,
The-
we have a
the
peer.
siblings need their own
We have a
voices.
peer there for the
Yes.
afflicted person.
Identified,
We
yeah.
have peers there for the parents to help bring that full circle
for the
family.
family.
Right, but we need to have some type of a
Well, there
peer group
needs to
that
just
works
be-
with the siblings.
I don't think we need like a specific group, but there's no service available. There's no like, okay, you're a sibling, so this is the program
Right,
for you. Like, and those kids are already forgotten about. They already feel forgotten, not as important. That for them to be given something that's just for them, their parents will
Exactly.
not be there. They
Right.
have nothing to do
They,
with
they
it.
can speak
They're-
freely.
And
Yeah.
they're the focus. Like that's awesome.
There needs to be
Yeah, I
different
agree.
age groups
They
too,
need
I
that.
think.
oh, it definitely would have to be
Yeah,
different age groups.
we talked about that.
Has
I
to be
think
age
that it
appropriate.
has to be separated by ages, and there's a different language for every age, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and it should all be handled differently. But
It should be like, we talk about the school-based programs that we'd like to see in every school, and those are all age-banded, there's different levels for
yeah.
each grade, and it has to be some type of a program or more intense and focused on the family that has been affected. So,
well, this
so
kid is
you have
already I mean, these kids, they
They're-
already know too much.
Exactly. They already
They've
have.
already seen too much.
Right.
They've already been through too much.
They don't need
so you're
that
coming
part.
At it
It's a
different
totally
way.
different thing.
Yeah.
Totally
Exactly.
different
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
They're confused about what they saw. It's a lot. It's a lot.
And it's not, unfortunately, I mean, it's not only siblings, sometimes it's children.
Well,
It's
listen, I
it's
was
my
just
parents
gonna
affected.
say
Yeah.
exactly. I was just gonna say that we always say like the parents, the parents, the parents. I just had
Sometimes it is the
a couple
parents.
weeks ago. I had a whole family in the consolation room waiting for me because the dad was a patient and there were the kids, and the dad's dad. You know what I mean? And
It's not generational.
it's not at all. I mean, it could be you, or you. It's not.
Wait, are you saying we're a lot older than
It
you?
doesn't. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that
I totally get you. I'm
no
sorry.
one can
Yeah.
count themselves out. Like, I know that we have to prevent. We have to have prevention for the children, right? But it could be the 30-year-old woman she's never touched a drug in her life.
I'm
And all of
sorry
a sudden
to-
she has an addiction.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for coming on. We're gonna really devote the month of May coming up to the Sherpa program and getting all the information out for Thomas's Hope. You're going to be looking and seeing some big rollouts in the next month and what services will be available, and we're really proud to bring that to you. Have a great weekend and enjoy this beautiful weather. Hopefully it stays that way and we don't have any snow forthcoming. Have a great weekend. Good night.